2052. Email at nilesoilauction@gmail.com.
Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, good morning. This is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. The Commissioner General of the South Sudan Revenue Authority, Simon Akwe-Deng, has called on businesses to clear any outstanding withholding taxes as the country prepares to roll out the value-added tax VAT. Activist Idman Yakani has urged inclusive political dialogue among all parties regarding the electoral deadlines outlined in the National Elections Act 2023 as a mandate. And a U.S. Department of Homeland Security notice has stated that the Trump administration is ending the temporary protected status for South Sudanese nationals that have been in the state for more than a decade. This and many more all coming in this bulletin with me, Darlington Moses. And now the news in detail. The Commissioner General of the South Sudan Revenue Authority, Simon Akwe-Deng, has called on businesses to clear any outstanding withholding taxes as the country prepares to roll out the value-added tax. Speaking during a workshop organized by the Revenue Authority in partnership with the Ministry of Finance and Planning and the World Bank on Wednesday, Akwe said South Sudan will implement VAT alongside the existing consumption tax. He explained that the rollout will include an electronic invoicing and transaction system aiming at digitizing payments, improving accountability and reducing human interference in tax administration. The Commissioner General said that while late payments normally attract penalties, the authority will waive all penalties for accumulated withholding taxes up to the 4th of November 2025. He encouraged businesses to remit any outstanding amounts to the government account without delay. The workshop held at the South Sudan Revenue Authority headquarters focused on improving tax compliance and addressing challenges related to donor-funded projects. It brought together officials from the Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Finance, development partners, and the private sector to discuss ways to enhance transparency and efficiency in tax administration. The Undersecretary for Planning at the Ministry of Finance and Planning, Benjamin Ayale Kayongwa, reminded managers of donor-funded projects that they are not exempt from paying taxes. However, he said equipment and vehicles used for projects operations may be exempted under the terms of donor agreements. The Commissioner General also reiterated that only the South Sudan Revenue Authority and its designated officials are authorized to collect taxes from citizens and businesses, and warned businesses to report any unauthorized individuals or organizations attempting to do so. Activist Idman Yakani has urged inclusive political dialogue among all parties regarding the electoral deadline outlined in the National Elections Act 2023 as amended. According to the Act, South Sudan is scheduled to hold national elections on 22nd of December. Section 41, subsection 1E requires the Government of National Unity to review and rename geographical constituencies by 22nd December 2025. If this deadline is not met, Section 41, subsection 1F stipulates that the constituencies used in the April 2010 elections will remain in effect. Yakane warns that the time remaining to fulfill Sections 41, subsection 1E is limited and that there is a high likelihood of reverting a sections, that is 41, subsection 1F, if political actors do not take timely action. He added that delays in implementing these provisions could affect the link between elections, constitutional processes, and population data. He urged the government to make key political decisions before 22nd December 2025, addressing electoral concerns raised by the United Nations, African Union and Intergovernmental Authorities on Development (IGAD), as well as technical issues identified by the National Elections Commissions. The organization activists also said any move to extend the transitional period or postpone the 2026 elections could face legal challenges at the East African Court of Justice, referring to similar cases from previous extensions. Yakani emphasized that maintaining the 22nd December 2026 election date is critical to sustaining peace and urge inclusive political dialogue among all parties to the 2028 peace deal. In October 2025, the chairpersons of the National Elections Commission (NEC), Professor Abednego Akok, proposed that the upcoming elections be conducted based on the 2008 population census and the 2010 constituencies. Earlier in the interview with iRadio, Professor Akok highlighted the limited time remaining before the schedules of elections and called on the parties and the government of the National Unity to amend the Commissions Act and the current constituency or constitutions to support the process. During the same period, Professor Akok stated that the Commission had also yet to receive funding for pre-election activities despite a presidential directive instructing the Ministry of Finance to release the necessary funds. This is iRadio News, and now before the international scene, a U.S. Department of Homeland Security notice has stated that the Trump administration is ending the temporary protected status for South Sudanese nationals that have been in place for more than a decade, several Western media have reported. It is said in a notice on their designated status, which expired on Monday, that nationals from South Sudan have a 60-day grace period to leave the United States before facing deportation starting in early January. Republican U.S. President Donald Trump has sought to strip legal status from hundreds of thousands of migrants from a number of countries since taking office in January as part of his broad immigration crackdown and America First agenda. South Sudan's temporary protected status designated was most recently renewed for 18 months from November 4th, 2023 to May 3rd, 2025. The termination marks a significant shift in U.S. policy toward South Sudan, a country still struggling to recover from years of civil war and humanitarian crisis. While the Department of Homeland Security says conditions have improved, humanitarian groups and regional experts caution that peace remains fragile, with deepening economic distress creating challenges for any safe return to South Sudan. The Temporary Protected Status Program is a humanitarian designation under the U.S. law for countries stricken by war, natural disaster, or other catastrophes, allowing recipients living in the United States protections from deportations and access to work permits. South Sudan has faced repeated cycle of violent conflict since 2011, with a civil war between 2013 and 2018 leaving 400,000 people dead. This is iRadio News, and now in the national news, many Ugandans are expressing their pride in the newly elected mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, who was born in Uganda and retains dual nationality. Some have described him as one of their own, saying he inspires them. A journalist who mentored him during his teenage internship at one of the Uganda's leading newspapers told the BBC that there were a lot of excitement in Uganda about Mamdani's rise, especially because of his young age. Uganda has the second lowest median age worldwide of just 16.2, according to CIA World Fact Book. Zohran, 34, is the son of Professor Mahmoud Mamdani, a prominent Ugandan academia while his mother, Mira Nayir, is a acclaimed filmmaker. And finally, Pope Leo has called for deep reflections on how migrants are treated in the United States, where he said many people were deeply affected by the controversial policy of mass deportation. In some of the strongest criticism to date of President Donald Trump's administration, the first ever US-born Pope Leo also warned that the US bombing of Venezuelan ships suspected of carrying drugs risk increasing tensions in the region. Emerging to address a bank of TV cameras outside his papal retreat at Castel Gandolfo and offering to answer one or two questions, Pope Leo XIV said there were people who have lived in the US for years and years, never causing problems, who have also deeply been affected by Trump's hardline policy on migration. Speaking in English and reaching a US audience directly, he reiterated the Catholic belief that every Christian will ultimately be judged on how they welcome the foreigner. This is iRadio News, and now to end this bulletin, let's have the recaps on the top stories once again. The Commissioner General of the South Sudan Revenue Authority, Simon Akwei Deng, has called on businesses to clear any outstanding withholding taxes and as the country prepares to roll out the value-added tax. Activist Idmani Akane has urged inclusive political dialogue among all parties regarding the electoral deadlines outlined in the National Elections Act 2023 as amended. And a U.S. Department of Homeland Security notice has stated that the Trump administration is ending the temporary protected status for South Sudanese nationals that has been in place for more than a decade. That's the end of iRadio Morning News. If there's a story or an event you'd like Adi to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 925 287 870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page iRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for news in Arabic. At the top of the hour, I am Darlington Moses. Thanks for listening.